welcome back to SK Hobbies AZ and I am Stitch. And on this episode, we are going to talk about the next and the part 3 build of a hard body build using a model kit. You're not going to want to miss this one. There's a lot involved with this bad boy, so stay tuned. All right, well, welcome back. So yes, as you can see, I got it sitting right here in front of me. This is the model kit. So this is an AMT. It's a 1940s Willys style. If I kind of show you, the theme that they have is kind of the Coca-Cola theme. And we took this body and mounted it onto one of my SCX24s. All right, so before we start talking about this body, let's go ahead and talk about what we did underneath. Now, it's not the normal setup that I normally have. This is, if you look at the chassis there, it's carbon fiber, and this is the Endura carbon fiber chassis. It's the LCG, lower center of gravity frame rail grids for the Deadbolt, JLU, Bronco, that style build. So it has the adjustments for the right links and all of that. And so we started with that and did a different motor in ESC. So this motor in ESC is actually by RC Hop-Ups. It's a 23 kV outrunner motor. So the ESC, as you see there, it's a 2 to 3S LiPo battery. It's got an internal 5 volt at 2 amps BEC with a constant current of 18 amps with a burst current of 25 amps. So it's not as big and beefy as the Furatech, Lizard Ultimate that I normally use, but we wanted to give this a shot and see how this works, and this is the perfect build, I think, for it. We are running Reefs RC's 99 micro up front, so we got some good steering on it. Now the mount for this motor is actually a 3D printed one from RC Hop-Ups. So it's a 3D printed mount, and then they also have a metal plate that goes on the back. The transmission that I have mounted in here actually is the stock transmission. The only thing I did was change out the motor on it, the new 3D printed plate, which the motor actually mounts to. So it takes the motor from down low, moves it up top. The rest of it is pretty much kind of the same. I'm running Endura high clearance links. This is set up on a Deadbolt chassis link, so we're using Deadbolt there. We're using aluminum skid plate. We're using the 43 millimeter shocks, as you can see. And then basically on the back side here, I put a piece of styrene down to create a plate for the battery. And then I just mounted, this is my receiver for my FlySky controller, and it mounts up there and it sets perfectly underneath the hood. Body mounting wise, if you've watched my previous videos on my description of this, you adjust this height here and this height here to get that shell, right at the height that you want. And I'm just using, thin strips of about, I think they're 1/4 of an inch, thin strips of that 060 styrene sheets, and just put strips right across the ends of the chassis right there, and I got it right butted up all the way to the end. Now this did extend out a little bit farther. I actually cut this chassis the end down right here and cut it so it actually, because the body sets and then the servo sets just a little bit farther forward. Like I said, I'm not going for a scale look. I was just trying to put a hard body on top of an SCX24. Eventually, I think I'm going to do a complete scale build on an SCX24 and see how that goes. And then on this portion here, the chassis, I put another piece of styrene cut to the length of the chassis rails, and that is just to hold the ESC down. From the model kit, the bumper that comes for this, I actually basically drilled holes into the plastic pieces that glue into the model kit chassis, and then just put some of my SCX24, the 1mm screws going right in through the chassis rail, and then it just holds that bumper in place. So the bumper is actually mounted on here. Steering servo horn wise, I'm using a Reefs RC steering servo horn. And now this is something completely different than what I normally have done. So underneath, I have portal axles. So these portal axles I actually picked up off of eBay, and they are from Hop-Ups, and got those mounted in there. It's going to be my first portal axle rig, so we'll see how that performs. It's not aluminum. It's a plastic housing, plastic knuckles. I did put 5mm extensions on the inside here and on the insides there to widen that wheelbase a little bit. So I do have those 5mm extensions. Those are Endura 5mm extensions. I did put, and these aren't CCXRC, the brass diff housings that I normally use. I put in just some Hobby Park brass diff covers on the rear and on the front, just adding a little bit more weight. So this thing actually weighs a lot less than any of my other rigs. But needless to say, we're going to see how this thing crawls and how it does. But you know, still getting quite a bit of angle before this thing drops. So we'll see how it performs on the rocks. Well, all right, so now let's jump into this body. Let me set this aside for a little bit. So now you can see this thing actually turned out looking pretty cool. But there were some, several modifications we had to do outside of just building this model. Same process went for attaching the cab to the bed. I used two thin sheets of styrene of the 060, cut to the width, pretty much this size right here, cut to the width of, and the length and width of the back of the bed. Glued that on, glued this all together. Now, because of how narrow this body is compared to this SCX24, and I'm going to show it to you guys on here, you can see how narrow that is. Now the shocks and the shock mounting portions actually are, they're wider than the bed of that body. So I had to figure out, how am I going to mount this on? Well, how I did that was I used some of that styrene that I have. And basically what I did is I notched out, and I'll show you there. So you can see I notched out the actual frame in here of the bed. And I used a piece of styrene, which is this piece right here. I glued a piece of styrene to the outside, and then I made this extension and cut out and notched it kind of at an angle, because the shock's kind of set at an angle like this, and just notched out that whole piece. And I basically made one template of how I wanted it, and then basically cut that template out 12 times and stacked all 12 of them on top of each other, gluing them together. And then I used some sandpaper and a file to smooth out the inside edges like I did there. And then I used one solid piece along the top here, and then glued all that together. And then I went and took it out to, I have a grinder, grinding station, and basically just kind of grinded that piece around and kind of made that shape of the box. Then once I did that, I glued it on this side, and the same for the other side. I did that. I just modeled it out, made it a mirror image of what I did over here, and notched it out on this side. Then this actually comes with a removable bed. So this actually pops off, and I just glued magnets there, and then I glued magnets to the inside. And you can see right there on the, see if I can get the light on it there. So you can see right there, I got the magnets there and the magnets on the inside. And actually how I did that is I basically got this piece put into place, marked with a little marker down in the bottom, down in here. I marked on this this piece where I wanted to center those magnets on each end, glued those 4 magnets in, stuck this in like that, and then put a little bit of CA glue on the end of one of my magnets and slid it into place on top of there to kind of hold it in place. And then that created this little box. So I'm actually going to show you why I didn't just glue this on is that this is going to be the battery compartment. So when I stick this on, I get that on the body, I can pop this off, and then I got my battery compartment right here. And then so I just stick my battery in. It did turn on because there is no like on and off switch on this. So we'll just show you how it looks. So now my SCX24 battery is in place in there, except for I got a wire that's sticking out right there. But if you look at it, it just sets in there. Now I'm not going to strap it in. I don't see a need to really have this battery strapped in if it's all enclosed into the box, and the wires kind of push down and hold it into place. And then it just magnetizes on there. All right, so moving on, the mounting. I just glued it's 2 pieces of styrene of the 1/4 inch. I glued them right onto there, centered some magnets onto there, and then along the back side, I went basically from the edge of the bed there to the edge of the bed there, and I glued it on with it a little bit extended past, and then I just trimmed it off with my hobby knife, and then put 2 magnets on here, and then it magnetizes right in. From the interior, did the interior in that same brown, and you can see right in there, got that brown interior. It's got red windows, and then you have your stack that's on top, right? And so this actually is attached to the engine, and we solved that by putting a piece of styrene right here to create a little platform. And then this piece is actually, it was about that big, and I kind of grinded it down with sandpaper until I got the look that I wanted of having that blower off of the top up there with the intake. And then glued that into place, and from there we figured out how to mount that. So where is this going for me is that eventually I'm going to do a scale build, but I wanted to figure out how I was going to mount these bodies, particular bodies, and what bodies will work and what not. This body is a little bit small for an SCX24, but being that I had it, I wanted to get this done. I think it kind of looks pretty cool. You know, I am running the Little Guy Racing Swamp Kings. These are the full-size tires, not like the other ones which are smaller. And then I'm running trail wheels on there with there is that brass insert in those trail wheels. But we will see how this performs on the course. If you got any questions on this build, don't forget to jump down into that comment section and let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bash that bell. I'm Stitch, SK Hobbies AZ, and I'm out.